Today I will be talking about bioprospecting and the role that it plays in indigenous communities. Currently, there are 121 patented drugs globally, which are made from plants, 74% of which were discovered pursuing claims of traditional ecological knowledge. This can only begin to reflect how important plants are in our lives. That said, in this PowerPoint I will be discussing the fundamental structure of bioprospecting and a company that has shown enormous potential in their efforts supporting benefit sharing, called Graham-Magulai Company Limited. Bioprospecting. What is it exactly? Well, hopefully I will be able to answer that question in this slide. Essentially, it is the search for biological, chemical, and genetic products and materials that could be beneficial for pharmaceutical and commercialized products in the future. This includes animals, microbes, plants, insects, and many more. Bioprospecting provides the opportunity for a well-balanced win-win situation, where indigenous communities are able to benefit from the resources and learn about sustainability, and the pharmaceutical industry gets the genetic information that they want. Keep in mind that it is often the case that countries that are biodiversity rich and biotechnologically poor tend to be where the prospecting takes place, and the countries that are biodiversity poor and biotechnologically rich are usually the countries that are willing to research and put money into the search for different resources. In bioprospecting, indigenous communities can be placed in one of two situations in relation to how their traditional knowledge is used by others. The first option is that the communities face biopiracy, and the pharmaceutical industries can access traditional knowledge without communities' consent or compensation. The second option, which is far superior, is that the communities become recipients of benefit-sharing agreements and receive compensation for the use of their traditional knowledge, both monetary and non-monetary. These are the two forms of traditional bioprospecting, but there exists an alternative form, which is referred to as the democratic form of bioprospecting. Essentially, the purpose is to give power to the people and give the local communities the opportunity to negotiate and work together. Bioprospecting has been highly controversial because it has not been defined whether indigenous communities should have access to the future benefits of their traditional knowledge and medicines. Well-known activist Vandana Shiva describes bioprospecting in her book as a sophisticated form of biopiracy, which turns intellectual knowledge into property that can be owned. She describes this as a dangerous move because there is the potential to turn communities and individual people against each other. Despite her views on bioprospecting, there is still hope for a system that will satisfy all requirements. According to the UN, poor countries lose $5 million a year due to unauthorized outsiders exploiting their traditional knowledge. This is surprising, but not uncommon, as cases of biopiracy are more likely to take place in poorer countries in the global south, where governments cannot afford to regulate the use of indigenous knowledge and its rights. Backtracking a few steps, what is biopiracy anyway? Well, it's essentially very similar to bioprospecting, in that it involves the search for useful biological resources for commercial use. Biopiracy implies the plundering of poor people and countries, and pirating their goods through beneficial chemicals in the pharmaceutical and agricultural industries. The term was introduced in the late 1980s and 1990s, when it was originally called chemical prospecting. The idea was promoted because there was increasing concern that species were going extinct, and essential genetic material was being lost. The idea that biopiracy was believed to be in order to conserve the environment is interesting, and contrary to what we believe, or what is commonly believed today. Lastly, the Convention of Biological Diversity contributes largely to many ideas surrounding bioprospecting. 3 points that the CBD offers for successful bioprospecting include conservation of biodiversity, sustainable use of modules, and fair sharing and benefits from the use of genetic resources. It is believed that this module could contribute to the win-win situation that I was talking about earlier, where the indigenous communities will receive the 3 points I just mentioned, and the world will be provided with new medicines. Benefit sharing is designed to benefit marginalized people and allow communities to benefit from their intellectual property. The idea of benefit sharing was introduced by the CBD in 1992 and has become increasingly important in bioprospecting endeavors. There is an ongoing debate, however, about the equality of benefit sharing, and it remains an issue because it is common that many communities do not have the abilities to create benefit sharing agreements, as it is an expensive and long process to enforce intellectual property rights. The large amount of genetic resources that have value in developing and industrialized countries has added to the tense nature of the debate. However, benefit sharing is really designed as a way for communities to develop, and is advocated as a better way to do so than traditional policies and practices. The Graham-Mulligai Company Limited, as I briefly referred to in the beginning of this slideshow, introduces a new form of bioprospecting. The company, which I will refer to as GMCL, is a community-based enterprise that sells raw herbs as well as commercialized products. The company is located in India and was established in 2000 by several Indian NGOs with the intention of, and I quote, linking advances and applications in bioprospecting to rural development and social outcomes for local communities. GMCL commercializes medicines in both urban and rural areas, and then sells the products to pharmaceutical giants under the name Village Herbs. The company works as the middleman, but since they are non-profit, they are not harmful to the benefits that the local communities receive. Their main mission remains to train local communities to evaluate for themselves their resources and give them the knowledge of self-empowerment. In order to put this into perspective, what are called sanghas are composed of a maximum of 20 gatherers and farmers. There can be more than one sangha to represent each village. The sanghas, so the gatherers and cultivators, own shares of GMCL, which allows them to carry some sense of ownership in the company. I want to stress the fact that GMCL is designed not only to represent, but to encourage participation by the community members. It is essential to have community participation in negotiations, otherwise they will not be represented properly, and distribution of benefits will be unfair. Although at this point GMCL is just taking off, they carry much potential for the future of benefit sharing and relationships between indigenous communities and the outside world. This company provides an example of bioprospecting where communities play central roles in the processes which locally benefit them. This will become increasingly important as the pharmaceutical industry continues to grow and the demand for new and better products continues over our heads.